God bless you. So glad so many are here. And thank you so much for your participation in our Bible study. This is our Bible study. I say that because I know growing up in Bible studies, I wasn't always comfortable with asking questions and even challenging, the Bible. And so I want to make sure that this is a safe space where we can do that, okay? So if you have any questions, comments, you can type them in the chat, even on the conference call line. I try to make sure we have that option as well because some people like to remain anonymous. And as you notice, when I say something about a person, it's only because they type something, okay? So please know that I'm never going to just call you out unless, you'd like for me to do that. But welcome. I want everyone to always feel comfortable. So we're walking through the book of Isaiah, and we have reached week 11. And this is the week where we're going to talk about crises in Jerusalem. Crises in Jerusalem. So when you think about the word crises, I'm sure that many of us understand what that word means. But for the purposes of us being on the same page, please understand that crises is the plural of crisis. And when we think about a crisis, it's simply a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. And crisis happens in the lives of Christians. Even in our lives as believers, we deal with crisis. The crisis is usually abrupt, and it's usually negative changes in society, negative changes in environmental factors, negative changes in politics. It could be negative changes in security. And so we're going to focus on various crises in Jerusalem. And when we consider it, we're going to look at chapters 36 to 39. So if you have your Bible, whatever version you have, please open it to Isaiah chapter 36. That's where we will begin. And then we'll finish with Isaiah 39. Now, chapters 36 to 39 form a bridge between the first and second parts of Isaiah's book, okay? So when we think about 36 and 37, Isaiah really is going to recount. What we're going to see is he's going to recount Assyria's siege of Jerusalem, which is a crisis that the prophet Isaiah had prophesied earlier, okay? And then once we get to chapters 38 and 39, we're going to find that Isaiah describes events chronologically earlier than the siege. But the mention of the Babylonia is going to prepare us for chapter 40, okay? So what we're going to observe is the way that the people respond to crisis or crises, if you want to talk about various crisis situations, how the people will respond to crises and to desperate situations, and then how God maintains control even through crisis. And this is good news for us on this evening because we face crisis in our individual lives, personal lives, and collectively as a people. And so even in America. And so we need to be reminded that God maintains control through everything. Okay. And that's what we're going to see. Now, the king of Assyria, he's causing trouble for King Hezekiah. King Hezekiah is reigning right now. And this man, the king of Assyria, is going to cause problems for King Hezekiah, going to cause problems for Judah and its capital, Jerusalem. So that's what we're going to find. But it's not just important to know that crisis will happen in your life. It's important for you to think about how you will handle it when it comes. And I said when it comes, not if it comes, because we know that man that is born of a woman is of a few days, and those days are filled with trouble. And a word synonymous with trouble is crisis. And so the question is, how do we handle it? So we're going to look at crises in Jerusalem and consider how we handle crisis or crises in our own lives. So let's look at chapter 36. When we look at chapter 36, and I see you, Brother Michael, saying thankful that God is in control. That's right. That's right. Yes, when, because it will indeed come. Yes, trouble will come. So understand that there were psychological attacks. So when I'm talking about crises, I want you to you really hear the various types that these people had to deal with. So the first one I want to talk about is psychological attacks. How many of us know that in our lives we will be attacked? Trouble will come in the form of psychological attacks, things that just happen to your mind, right? Things that just are on your mind, they may stay on your mind, and then things that people say. Well, understand that this king had summoned his commander to go out and talk to or speak to King Hezekiah and his people. So the first thing they have to deal with are words. And we know that there is power in words. And so the commander gives this tempting speech. That's what we're going to see in Isaiah 36 verses 4 and 5. So I want you to look at that. Whatever version you have, look at Isaiah 36. And I want you to look at the commander's tempting speech and how he's really throwing out these psychological attacks. And I want you to think about psychological attacks in your own life, your own experience, even as a believer. So in 36, we see some things. We find that Hezekiah had been king of Judah for 14 years when this king of Assyria invades the country and captures every walled city. And so as he captures every walled city, like I said, he orders an army commander to go out and to speak to Hezekiah and the people. So when we get to verse 4, the Assyrian commander tells them something. He says, I have a message for Hezekiah from the great king of Assyria. And so then he raises these questions. And in the questions, this psychological attack really is this tempting speech to make these people wonder if they should continually choose God. Understand that when you join, for example, a Bible study like this, you had to choose God this evening at 7 o'clock. Everybody doesn't do that, right? But it's not just important to choose God every once in a while, but we have to continually choose God. This is why so many of you are so faithful and we gather every Thursday, right? Because you're making a choice, and you're saying, I'm going to be intentional about studying the word. Well, what this commander is doing, he raises a question, on what are you basing this confidence of yours? If you're going to trust in your God, Hezekiah, on what? I mean, do you think that you can plan? This is verse 5. Do you think that you can plan to win a war with nothing but your words? Who's going to help you? Who's going to help you if you turn against the king of Assyria? This is what he's doing. He's pretty much telling these people, what reasons are you going to give for not trusting in the king of Assyria, but then trusting in the Lord? What? And the fact is, we may not have a commander in our face, but every day the world is challenging us with, are you still going to trust your God? Are you still going to depend on your God? And then even in verse 10, this commander has the audacity to say to the people that they don't need to forget that the Lord was who sent them there with orders to destroy the nation. Think about that. And yes, that may be true, but the same way God calls one thing to happen, God calls another thing to happen. So God chose to use Babylonia, as a tool, to take God's people through some things. But the same way God ordained that to happen, God can stop it whenever God wants to. But we have to remember that. These people have to remember that. But he's saying, don't forget, it was the Lord who sent me here to do this. Your same God. So now you're going to trust in that God rather than the king of Assyria. He says in verses about 14 to 20, if you look at that, he's still talking. He's still talking and saying that the people should not be fooled by Hezekiah. Don't trust him. Don't pay attention to him. Pay attention to my king. Do you really think the Lord God can do better for you? And I want you to think in your own life, and you don't have to share, but I want you to be honest about times when the enemy wanted you to second guess God. wanted you to think about perhaps another type of power, wanted you to focus on your financial power rather than the power of the God who created even your finances. I want you to think about times when the enemy wanted you to focus more on medical power, if you will. You know, I have the COVID vaccine now, so I'm going to focus on the fact that, hey, I'm fine. You know, more so those medical type things than you do the God who created medicine. Or even if you're fearful of the vaccine, you know, looking at that, the fear of the vaccine more than you are trusting in the God who is able to heal, cure, protect, right? So you may not have a commander in your face, like I said, but I want you to think about if you've ever been tempted and threatened as this field commander tempted Jerusalem's people. And I want you to think about how we should deal with that type of temptation. We think of temptation in various ways. Right now, I'm asking you to think of it in the way of, I'm trying to tempt you to abandon what the Lord has said, who the Lord is. I'm trying to tempt you to do that. Because even on social media, there are a lot of venues that are trying to get us to do that. Oh, Jesus didn't really die on the cross for the sins of humanity. Jesus was a good person. I believe he existed. He was a prophet, a teacher, a great man. He may have even had healing hands, but he didn't sacrifice, you know, for the sins of the world. Come on, right? Sometimes we're so educated and smart that we think we know, but we don't know anything at all. We don't know anything at all. And I see you, Brother Michael, saying we must stay in prayer. That's right. And if you stick with me during this Bible study, you're going to find that that's exactly what Hezekiah did. He went to the Lord in prayer. So we'll get there. You're absolutely right. So then the people respond to the commander's threats and the commander's so-called promises. If you look at chapter 36, verses 21 to 22, you'll find that there is a response. There is a response. The response in 21 and 22. Do you see that? Let's look at Isaiah 36, verses 21 to 22. So it tells us that King Hezekiah had warned these men, had warned the people not to really respond to the commander, what the commander had said. That's what Hezekiah told them. So then what they did in response then, they didn't respond verbally, but they tore their clothes in sorrow, and then they went and reported to Hezekiah all that was said. They did not answer the commander. So then I want us to go back to thinking about being tempted ourselves by the words of those, you know, energies that are contrary to the God we say we serve. Do you spend unnecessary words on this type of talk? What if you only had a certain amount of words to use per day? Let's say you had 500 words to use per day. Would you waste them on someone like this who is talking negatively about your king? I hope not. So maybe that's something for us to take away from this Bible study. Stop using your words when you don't need to. So they did respond, but they responded in a way of sorrow. Like these words were just like, oh my goodness. But they obeyed Hezekiah and they did not respond with words. So then when we get to chapter 37, what we find, I just told you that they went and they reported what was said. They reported it to Hezekiah. So then let's look at what Hezekiah does when he hears the Assyrians' message. Let's look at 37. If we look at 1 through 4, just as early as that, as soon as Hezekiah heard the news, we see what he did there, right? We see that he tore his clothes, because remember that was that signified sorrow, that signified suffering and pain in the days of antiquity. So he tore his clothes. It says there in verse 1, put on sackcloth. Then he went to the temple of the Lord. We see that. He went to the temple of the Lord. He told the ministers to dress in sackcloth. See that? I'm trying to go slowly so that we're together, okay? And I see you, Brother Michael, saying we must respond in a positive way, a way that is pleasing unto God. That's right. And God has told us to watch our mouths. That is definitely a biblical teaching. So then look, it says in verse 3 that Isaiah, it says that Hezekiah wanted Isaiah to know some things. So to tell Isaiah that these words that they heard were difficult, and they were, and that they were in these disgraceful times. If you look at verse 3, the nation was like a woman too weak to give birth when it's time for her baby to be born. So then what Hezekiah does in verse 4, he asks Isaiah to please pray for those who are left alive. Pray for us. The king of Assyria sent his army commander to insult the living God. Perhaps the Lord heard what he said and will do something if you will pray, Isaiah. So he goes to the man of God and asks him to pray. Please pray, and maybe something will happen. So I want us to think about Hezekiah's actions. So I said, let's think about the men's actions and their response, right? Now I want us to think about Hezekiah's actions and how his actions were a godly response in crisis. A godly response. And what attitude really laid behind his actions. When I read it, I thought, wow, what attitude lays behind his actions is the attitude of prayer. So if I'm going to use my words, now he went to the man of God and asked the man of God to pray. But that was a very godly response. And this is why we can't take for granted our spiritual leaders. Whenever people are talking poorly about ministers and pastors and things like that, just remember that these are persons who stand in the gap for you. You ought to be using them in the way that that Hezekiah is using Isaiah right now. Prayer is in order in times of trouble and in times of difficulty and in times of crisis. And the man of God he's seeking out the man of God to say, hey, on our behalf, would you go to the Lord? Would you pray? Okay, would you pray? Do you really think about the time that your pastor prays for you? Do you appreciate that? I just want you to think about it. And if you don't have a pastor, I want you to think about ministers maybe that you know. Do you ever think about the amount of time that they spend praying? Do you know that it is the prayers of the righteous, such people as that makes it to where we have not been utterly cast down as a nation? If it was not for the man of God and the woman of God praying, this world that we say God has in his hands, do you know who's going to the Lord on behalf of this world? So just remember that when people are tearing down ministers and pastors, if you know even one that is righteous enough, because nobody's perfect in this thing, trust me. If you know at least one, then you watch how you allow people to talk about your pastors or your ministers or men and women of God. What I'm saying is, I have heard many people say, for example, that men are dogs. And I really don't like that, because it's a negative connotation and it has a lot attached to it. And I have to say to those persons when they make those comments, well, I know at least two. I have a brother and I have a father. I don't know every single thing that they do in every moment, but I can tell you that they are not dogs. So whenever I hear people say men are dogs, I have to correct them, because I know at least two. So what I'm saying is, you don't know every minister, you don't know every pastor, you don't know. But if you know even one that's trying to get it right, that's taking out time with you to pray, to study, to preach, to teach, then do not let people run down the man of God. Do not let people run down the woman of God. We're going to have to stop doing this, because allowing people to do that, because what I'm seeing here in the text is that Hezekiah was a king, but it does not say that he was the man of God. So you can be a whole lot of things. But just remember that you ought to have some place you can go. So Hezekiah has somewhere to go. So then if we keep looking at this, we see that the Lord answers Hezekiah's plea. Look at, we're in Isaiah 37. Look at verses 5 to 8. God through Isaiah told Hezekiah not to worry about the insulting things that had been said about him. We see that in Isaiah 37 verses 5 to 8. Whenever the Lord sent the message to Hezekiah from Isaiah, he says that I am the Lord. Don't worry about the insulting things that's been said about you. You know, I'm going to take care of it. You see that? So then this should help us on this evening if someone is saying negative things about you. So I talked about people saying negative things about the men and women of God. Now I'm going to talk about people saying negative things about you. People had negative things to say. These commander and all these people had negative things to say about the king Hezekiah. But God is saying, don't worry about the insulting things that they had been saying to you and about you. I'm going to take care of it. So I want to encourage you on this evening that if someone has their mouth on you negatively, don't worry about that. Because God has plans. You see, this commander and this Assyrian king thought that they had it going on because the Lord was using them to teach God's chosen people a lesson. But let's go back to what I just said. The Lord was using them to teach God's chosen people a lesson. So that means the same way that God chooses to use you, the same way that God chooses to have you be part of history and of a particular story, God can stop that thing whenever God wants to, whether it be something good or bad. So always acknowledge God in whatever it is that God gives you the opportunity to take part in. This commander got so caught up in his own power. I have the power over you people, Judah and Jerusalem, even over you, King Hezekiah. Look at what the Lord has sent me to do. But don't worry about that, King Hezekiah. Because I am God, I am sovereign, and I write the story. And I can change it, I can rewrite it, I can end a chapter, start another chapter, another book if I choose to. That's what sovereignty is. And I see you, Brother Michael, saying there must be a covering. That's right. And Dr. Berry, good to have you here. You say don't just pray don't just pray bless him or her prayer. That's right. Pray for them like you would your family. That's right. So don't just pray and say, bless my pastor, bless my, and I'm going to talk about the type of prayer. I'm glad you said that, because when we get to Hezekiah's prayer, I'm going to talk something about how we pray. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. And Brother Michael says we serve a God who will stand in front of us. That's right. That's right. Exactly. That's right. So then let's get down to where Hezekiah prays after the king of Assyria's words. This is in Isaiah 37, 9 to 13. So I just talked about how we're going to focus on that. So let's look at, we're still in 37 verses, let's see, 9 to 13. Okay, see if you can find that. Okay, give you some time because I know you're already there. Some of you are already there. So what we see is that the king of Assyria is telling Hezekiah not to trust his God and don't be fooled by God, right? And so after Hezekiah had read the note from the king of Assyria, what we find is that he took it to the temple and he spread it out for the Lord to see. Isn't that interesting? So he's about to pray, but I want you to pay attention to the disposition that King Hezekiah is in as he's preparing to pray. He takes the very thing that has bothered his spirit and he lays it out, spreads it out in the temple for the Lord to see. So he takes his trouble, which is a physical thing. Now your trouble may not be physical, but if it manifests itself in a physical way, someone sent you an email and it just wrecked your world. Print it out and take it and open it for the Lord to see. Now we know the Lord sees it, but I'm just giving us an example. I'm talking about a certain type of way that we can pray. We say leave it on the altar. What is it? For Hezekiah, it is this note. So take your thing to the Lord And then Hezekiah prays. And when he prays, his prayer is so beautiful because what he does is he lays out his convictions before the Lord. So we're talking about how we pray. Dr. Berry said, when you pray for the man and woman of God, don't just pray and say, bless him, Lord. Bless her, Lord. Let's think about going a little deeper. So what Hezekiah says, he says to the Lord, you know, you're all powerful. I'm in verse 16 of chapter 37. You're all powerful, God. You're the God of Israel. So then we can say the same thing. You're all powerful, God. You're the God of the United States of America, if you will, of this nation. You created the heavens and the earth. You alone rule. Look at how he's saying that. And now you see how this Assyrian king has insulted you, not just me, but he's insulted you. You see, you need to take it personally when people insult the church. You need to take it personally. That's God's house. You need to take it personally when people insult the men and women of God. You need to take it personally when the people, your brothers and sisters, are insulted. That's what he's saying. You see how they have this king of Assyria has insulted you. And I tell you, when we think about some of the things that we see on television now, it's an insult to the church. Even the office of preacher and pastor, it's insulting. We laugh at all of these things. You know, I saw something the other day, and I don't know what the program is going to be, but it's coming out on perhaps Netflix. But they showed like a clip. And what they were doing was they were, it was like I guess it was supposed to be some type of comedy. But they were pretending to be the preacher, and they were saying things, and if you think about it, and it was black people, and it looked like, it was a predominantly black church. It was like a black situation. So I don't know what type of, denomination or anything like that. But it made me think about the fact that, it's usually the reverends who are made to be a joke. I never see, when it comes to the Muslim experience, we're not doing that with the imam, right? I never see anybody doing that. When it comes to even some of the other religions, you don't tease about that because those people are serious about what they believe. You better watch it because they're willing to sacrifice themselves for their religion. But with Christianity and with the church and even the black church, sometimes we take it as a joke. Everything is a joke. It's funny. But no, you need to take it personally if you are a believer and people are making jokes about your faith, making jokes about warriors of your faith, not just talking about people who have lived in the past like Isaiah and Jeremiah and David. No, we don't just honor those persons. God is still using people now, still using men, still using women. This thing is not a joke. Everything ought not be funny when it comes to that. So it's interesting how, we see those types of things like it's comedy. But no, King Hezekiah is saying they have insulted you. And then he says that it is true, our Lord, that Assyrian kings have turned nations into deserts. They destroyed the idols of wood and stone that the people of those nations had made worship. That's true, but you are our God. And you're our Lord and you're our God. We ask you to keep us safe from the Assyrian king. Then everyone in the kingdom on earth will know that you are the only God. When was the last time you said, God, I want you to do things that are miraculous, not so much for me, not so much for my mom or my dad or for all these people, but I want you to do it so that they can see that you are the only God, that you are the true God. Make it happen, not so much to benefit me, not so much to benefit just the church, but we need people to see that our God is real. We need people to see that our God is real. So when you do it, God, I'll give you glory so they'll know that, yes, I may have had surgery, but it was you who guided the surgeon's hands. Yes, I may have received the COVID vaccine shot, whatever, but you know what? It's you that's really keeping me protected. Because the other day when I saw a car accident, that COVID vaccine is not the one that protected me from not being part of that accident. It was you. So So thank you. I'm going to give you glory when you make these things happen. So I love the way that Hezekiah prays. And so in what ways does our prayer life reflect our convictions about God? And that's all I'm talking about. What are your convictions about God? Do you even get bothered? Are you even bothered, or do you get upset when people joke about your faith? How can you increasingly incorporate your beliefs into your prayers, as Hezekiah did? Lord, I believe you to be the healer that I know you to be. I believe you to save like your word says. I mean, how much of that stuff do you declare? But you can't talk like that if you don't know the word. That's why it's a blessing that we gather like we do every Thursday. Because if you don't know it, you cannot pray it. You cannot pray a word that you do not know. So when people say they can't find the words to pray, I wonder sometimes, are you in the word, or are you just looking for your words? Now, if you're looking for your words, they should be filled with conviction like King Hezekiah's. So we're going to work on that. So then by the time we get to verses 21 to 35, the Lord's answer to Hezekiah's prayer is prophecy against the king of Assyria. Okay, so let's look at what the Lord says. We're still in 37, because I don't want to just say that Hezekiah prayed without talking about how God answered the prayer, because we know that God always answers prayer. Never let anyone make you think that God does not answer every prayer, because God absolutely does. So we're going to look at the Lord's answer. Okay, I see you, Dr. Berry. Some of us, I'm going to have to press this little button to see the rest of it. Some of us, or some of the shows, are a tool of the enemy to discredit and desensitize the saints. That's it. And others about the church and faith in general. That's right. So don't let anyone make you think that you're being super holy because you acknowledge exactly what Dr. Berry just said. Some of these shows are tools of the enemy. That's why the Bible tells us, where is it, in Romans 12:2, to not be conformed to the ways of the world, to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. If you read that in the Message version of the Bible, I think because I was reading it the other day. If I can find this really quickly, I was just reading it. I want to listen to this. This is how it was read in the Message Bible. And I was like, wow. I'm in Romans 12:2. It says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. Isn't that powerful? So just for I have all kinds of notes in my phone, in my note section. But just to note that, I read Romans 12:2 from the Message version of Scripture. So I'll just repeat that. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. So you know what that means. Some things you're not going to be able to watch. And if you do, watch it for purposes to substantiate what I'm talking about right now, so that you can share with someone that we need to stop making our faith a joke. Everything is not meant to be just laughed at. It's not funny. I mean, to me, Jesus Christ is not funny. Christianity is not funny. Okay, there's room for that in other spaces. So let's look at 37:21 to 35, because what we see is how the Lord answers Hezekiah. Okay, 21 to 35. Okay, so what we see is that God is going to, and I'm trying to sum it up because I know we have 2 more chapters. So let me see how I can sum this up. So the Lord knows that King Hezekiah prayed to him about the king of Assyria. And so the people of Jerusalem are going to be fine. The king of Assyria has cursed and shouted and sneered at God, the holy God of Israel, and the fact that he allowed his officials to insult the Lord, God is not pleased. God is not pleased. And so what King Hezekiah knows is that in the end, God's people will win. In the end, God's people will win. So just be sure that you note that the point is that the Lord does answer prayers. Okay, all of them. All of them. So let's move on. We need to move on to chapter 38 because Hezekiah, the king, he gets sick. He gets sick. So then what I want us to see in 38 is that King Hezekiah, yes, Reverend Ward, I see you. We win. That's right. That's right. So Hezekiah gets sick and he almost dies. And so he's so sick that he turns toward a wall and prays again. So this is a very different type of prayer. So I'm talking about the disposition. Remember the first example that we see is that Hezekiah actually took that note to the temple and so opened it so that the Lord can see it. And then he talks about his convictions based on his faith. He talks to the Lord and so candidly. And so then now he's sick. Now he's sick. And so what King Hezekiah does is really interesting because he's open with the Lord to the point where he talks about who he is to God, and he also kind of reminds God. So of who he is. He turns to the Lord and he says to the Lord not to forget that he's been faithful to him. Now, King Hezekiah hasn't been perfect, but in his reign as king, he has been faithful. He hasn't done everything right, but he has obeyed the Lord as much as he could with all of his heart. And so he asked the Lord to do what's right, and then he starts to really cry. He starts to really weep. And I love this portion because we see a man crying. And in our society, we don't always embrace the reality that men are human too. So I love the way that King Hezekiah is not so into his manhood that he forgets that God is his father that he can cry to. So he cries. Then the Lord sends Isaiah with a message for King Hezekiah. And he tells him, hey, Hezekiah, I've heard your prayer and I've even seen you cry. And I'm going to let you live 15 more years. And I'm going to protect you and your city from the king of Assyria. So that's another answered prayer. That's another answered prayer. And God is going to prove to Hezekiah that he will keep his promises. He's going to prove it. And so what's the proper response to God, when God answers your prayers? What do you do? Well, what Hezekiah does is after he gets well, he creates this song of praise. He praised God after he gets well. A song of praise is written. A song of praise is written. So King Hezekiah may have received a note, but now he's about to write one. Look at that. So he received a note that was disheartening, and now he's about to write a note of praise to God. So I want to challenge us on this evening to spend our time wisely. Many of us still, because of COVID-19, we're not doing things the way that we are used to. So how about let's not pray the way that we're used to? What would it look like if we created a song of praise, a prayer of praise, and we actually wrote it down? So then I want you to look at Isaiah 38 verses 9 to about 19, because I want you to see an example of a song that is written to the Lord. Maybe you can do that, okay? And Dr. Berry says we have been anesthesia. Oh yeah, so we have anesthesia. Yeah. So the world has given us an anesthesia, if you will, our values, and we're trying to fight in our own strength. That's right. I absolutely agree. We're trying to fight in our own strength. So then, fighting our own strength, I'll go back to this COVID vaccine. Now that I have the vaccine, I'm all right. You need to continue to depend on the Lord. You need to continue to depend on the Lord. Don't let the world trick you. So let's just look a little at this praise that Hezekiah offers. He says, I thought I would die during my best years. I thought I would be a prisoner. I thought I would be a prisoner. I thought I would never again see you, my Lord, or any of the people who live on this earth. My life was taken from me like the tent that a shepherd pulls up and moves. Look at that. Until morning came, I thought you would crush my bones. So he's just writing. I cry, I cry like a swallow. I mourn like a dove. Look at how poetic that is. So yours may read a little differently. But the point is, he is really writing to the Lord and really praising the Lord. No one in the world of the dead can thank you or praise you. So hey, I wanted to stay alive so I can praise you, and talk about how faithful you are. Only the living can thank you as I'm doing today. Each generation tells the next about your faithfulness. So what if the letter that you write to God, the song of praise that you write to God, lasts until the next generation? Your children's children's children may read about your song of praise, your letter, your note to God. Wouldn't that be beautiful? What if they read it at your funeral or something like that, or your memorial? Wouldn't that be beautiful? So instead of just writing to people, just writing emails, right? Just making notes and comments on social media, what would it look like for you to put your pen to paper, or you can type it, and think about writing to the Lord? I see you, Sister Gloria. You say, I always thank God for my healing. And I let him know how grateful I am. That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's what King Hezekiah did. What if you write that down? It may be a gift. I know it'll be a gift to God, but it may be a gift, as he says, for each generation as you tell about the Lord's faithfulness. So then chapter 39, please know, chapter 39 just really confirms that the Lord revealed the Babylonian exile to Isaiah. If you look at 39, it's only 8 verses. And so Isaiah tells Hezekiah in verse 5 that he has a message for him from the all-powerful Lord. And he just tells him that one day everything you and your ancestors have stored up will be taken to Babylonia. So that's what that is. It's really, confirming for us that the Lord really did reveal to Isaiah about the Babylonian exile. And some of their sons would be taken to Babylonia, where they would be disgraced and made to serve in the king's palace. Okay, so that's our Bible study for this evening as we think about crisis or crises, which is more than one crisis, right? When we think about crises in Jerusalem, I just wanted us to be sure that we can kind of parallel some of that with crises that we see now in 2021. I know you see it. I don't even have to give you the rundown. I mean, I could call all these names. We keep saying, say the name, say the name. But I know that we suffer from a collective crisis or crises experience. But I really want to pray for you and your individual crises, okay? And if it's not you, then I want to pray for someone in your family or someone connected to you who may be experiencing crisis right now. Perhaps trouble in their health, trouble in their marriage, trouble with their money, trouble on their job, trouble with their children, trouble with their mental state, psychological attacks. We are dealing with all these things collectively, but wow, you're also dealing with your own things. I mean, you turn on the news and you see all of these things, but then when you turn off the news, you have to live with you, right? And so just remember the responses that we talked about. Remember, those men did not respond with words to the king of Assyria. Isaiah prayed. He went to the man of God and asked him to pray. So he valued the man of God. And then even with the crisis of illness, Hezekiah prayed to the Lord. And then he responded with praise, with thanks, with a letter that he wrote to the Lord God all powerful, and in control of everything. So that's our Bible study for this evening. So I hope that you gathered something in that to where you can really manage the crises that you will find in this life. So let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much for this opportunity to study together once more. God, I pray that you will continue to guide us as we face crises in America. Not only in America, but in our personal lives. And not only in our personal lives, but in the lives of those who we hold dear. So God, I just pray that you will continue to open our minds to how you handle everything, how you're still in control of everything. God, remind us to sing a song of praise when the world would rather us laugh even in your face. God, I ask that you cleanse us from all unrighteousness. For all of us Christians who find it comical, for all of us Christians who make fun of certain moments that you find valuable, help us, God. Help us to understand that it's okay to laugh. We need to laugh because it's good for our soul, but not at the expense of the world seeing us not take you seriously. God, we take you seriously on this evening. We love you and we bless you. We thank you for another opportunity to study together. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here on the conference call line. God bless you. And God bless you for being here social media. We'll gather together on next week if it be the Lord's will. God bless you, Brother Curtis. Great lesson. God bless you. Thank you for being here. You all have a great evening, okay? And remember, keep your head up and laugh when it's appropriate. But just remember that God, our God, is no joke. Have a good evening.